So let's start talking a little bit about myself. I have been working with quality automation and continuous improvement at big consulting companies for the last 16 years. And I'm now at CI&T, a company that is focused on digital transformation. So what I'm doing here is using hardcore lean principles into a complete agile context. So tests and more recently automation have been a great source of joy, and to be able to help the teams and companies into this journey is one of the things that most motivates me. Personal side, I have a couple of kids, adorable, a young lady of 14 years and a young man, 10 years, and I'm married with a CINT as well. So let's talk a little bit about digital transformation. So, what is digital transformation in the end? Many things have been said, but if you look the meaning behind this in Wikipedia, it states that digital transformation is the adoption of digital technology to transform services or business that were previously non-digital or plain manually. So, in the end, to embark in the journey of digital transformation, all you need to do is to start migrating or creating services or business for the digital world. Pretty easy, right? But let's talk a little bit now about automation. So now that we know a little bit what is digital transformation, what is automation? So, again, according to Wikipedia, automation is the technology by which a process or procedure is performed with minimal human assistance, meaning that automation can be achieved if anything is done automatically without the need for us to do it ourselves. And by anything, I mean warning about the server being offline, a password reset, an escalator, filling out a form automatically, test, and even environment provision. So this is pretty big. Many people say that automation is a threat, that automation will replace jobs, will take out people. And yes, this is partially true in the meaning that some jobs will be removed, but they will be replaced with other types of jobs with more value added. So some people will be taken out of their current jobs and will be assigned to new tasks that could be even to control the bots that are coming, the automations. So sometimes some reskilling, yes, may be necessary, but if the automation journey is well planned, all of this must be considered a lot. So let me see if we have any questions. No, everything is okay. So how they correlate? As I have said previously about digital transformation, it's also about getting services that were plain manually, right? So, for example, I have a process of selling a product and manually emitting and filling out the invoice. What would be the start of the digital transformation journey in this case? To have a software where I input all the items I have for sale, then record all sales into that software and print the invoice based on the items I sold. And how about accounting? I could get the invoices and then manually transcript the items into the account software. And how to automate this? I can create a robot that would take all the information digitally, copy it, and then paste it into the accounting software. As a second step, I could create an integration between both software and automated, transform my journey entirely digital. So in the end, automation is one of the biggest enablers for digital transformation at scale. When we really start to get the digital transformation and get to a scale, I cannot proceed further a lot without automation. So to highlight this point, I have brought here a very interesting study that is the State of DevOps 2019, and it states very clearly that all the elite players have way more automation than medium and low performers. Even more, the elite performers deliver 280 times more frequent code deployments than low performers, and the lead time from commit to deploy is 106 times faster. And what are the biggest bets in terms of automation for these elite groups? Automated builds, automated unit tests, automated provisioning, and deployment to test environments. Automation deployment to production a little bit less, and the list goes on and on. Okay, so now we know what automation is, how it correlates to digital transformation. But have you ever wondered what types of automation are there? Hundreds. For example, the escalator that I mentioned previously is a mechanic automation. But for this presentation, we will focus on two automation, the non-technical automation and technical automation. What do I mean by non-technical automation? It's an automation focused on a business process and service only this business process. So in this sense, when we work on this type of automation, we need to be very aware that we need to consider this as a living process because process change, they're always evolving. So we need always to reassess the process, see if it changes, and then fix the automation accordingly. When we talk about non-technical automation, we usually do robotic desktop automation, RDA, which relates for more basic automation. So it uses the desktop, your computer, to do the automation. Workflow automation per se. We also talk about the robotic process automation, the RPA, which is a more robust and scalable automation, and as well intelligent automation, which is the automation that makes RPA and cognitive, making complex decisions and working with unstructured data. When we talk about technical automation, we are usually talking about automation that involves non-technical tasks, such as data automation, infrastructure automation, very important for DevOps. Test automation, everyone heard about test automation. I think it's the most famous automation. And even IT operations automation, such as a server restart, a password reset, etc. Into those, it's very interesting to be able to put some intelligence into those as well and use some kind of self-servicing triggering via bots, etc. So for example, what we could do is to have a bot where I go and say, I need to reset my password. And then the bot can reply to you, okay, what is your user? What is the system you want? And then you can start doing this really easily. So, tips to start your journey. Now that we know automation is and what types of automation exist, is how can we start this? First of all, understand your reality. What kind of automation will you start? Who are your promoters and detractors? What is the technology background you will be faced with? Are the process well established? Is the process as optimized as they could be? The areas that will be part of the automation are siloed. Do we have all the access we need to have? Access to the process, access to the related documentation, and people are available to explain this process. How is the executive support for this initiative? Start small. Consider the smallest automation, the easiest and with the biggest impact quick wins to start your journey. Consider incremental deliveries. Showcase the value for the automation to gain momentum for this initiative. Focus your efforts. Instead of starting the initiative with all areas possible, start small, start focus. Choose one area, one application, one technical process to start with. Plan your journey. Start, assess, correct if necessary. Consider 2 to 4 weeks sprints and proceed delivering something valuable each sprint, incrementing until you have one application area with considerable automation. Consider automations that can be reused in other areas and groups. Return over the investment. Be aware that any initiative needs to consider what is the return over this investment. When choosing the automation, consider how many times you will run this automation, how stable is the process application that is being automated, because more times you run this automation, more it will pay it off. So consider cost for maintainability, license if applicable, development cost versus how many times it will be run, and efficiency gain. The gain can be immaterial, such as company brand or executive decisions, but all of this must be explicit. 2. We will consider only free options, open source, or do we have a budget? Do we have a benchmark for this tool? Does it have support, training? If you are not the person that is going to implement it, is the skill for this tool readily available? Can you do a POC for the tool to be sure it is compatible? How is the learning curve for the tool? What are the security requirements for this tool? Plan, 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 and then plan a little bit more. Establish the timeline. Prioritize the automations. Treat it as a project. Use the product backlog. Have a technical PO to understand the backlog. Consider skills for the team. Schedule, effort, and track progress. Report progress for the area involved and the executives. Reusable. Make the automation reusable. Don't hard code the parameters nor data. Understand, more people using your automation, more it will pay it off. Advertise the automation and have it ready to be implemented in other areas. Have a single repository for all the automation to share with others and create an automation community. Resilient. For most process screen related objects to change, either its location or the ID. So the process. Consider collecting more than one parameter to have the automation as resilient as possible. If one parameter fails, the other can be used. If all extra parameters fail, also plan to have a good error treatment clear. If your robot fails, plan to have a warning sent so the bug can begin. Scalable. Consider tools, automation, and planning for scalability. Can this initiative be used throughout the whole company? Can the tool be used by everyone? Can you run with this tool 20, 50, 5,000 automations at a time? Do you have a good control command center to control your automations? What is the performance of the tool? So we have a lot to consider. So this is really important that we can do always this checklist. So where to start when we talk about the non-technical automation? Usually the best place to start your automation journey for business process is where you spend more time with simple process, not many steps, and almost to none business rules. For example, consider the tedious work of copying and pasting information from an invoice to an ERP. You go to the invoice window, you find the field date, copy date. Go to the ERP, find field date, paste field date, and so on until the end of the document. This is pretty easy and there are no business rules. Example, if the value is larger than 500, VNT data must be required. This would be the most likely place to start. Big wins, minor automation. Or let us consider a simple workflow where you share files with your customer. You use Google Drive, your customer uses Dropbox. For example, if a client uploads a new file for your team into Google Drive, an automation can automatically copy that file over to Dropbox or whatever file sharing solution your team uses. So this is pretty straightforward as well and pretty easy as well. Lastly, for the easy automations, we have clear and defined rules. For example, the bot keeps listening for a folder. Every time a file is placed there, it checks for its name, and if it's invoice dash, it triggers the process fill invoice. If it's payment dash, it triggers the process accounting. And then if the value is more than 500 on the field value, it creates a new entry, etc., etc., etc. First of all, you need to understand the process, define and clarify all rules involved, and then start automate. Depending on the complexity of the bot, you can use some free and more simple, more coded needed tools such as Automate, even Selenium for web, or plain code the automation, basic workflow, etc. If you need additional capabilities, but we will start the automation from your desktop using attended automation. Usually, this type of automation kidnaps the machine while it's running, and the worker is unable to use it. So for this, you can use, for example, Softomotive Win Automation. It's a great tool with OCR support. Some complex rules it allows as well. But if you want to go full for a full RPA solution running either attended and unattended bots, you can go for automation anywhere, UiPath, Blue Prism, etc., using its command center, OCR, security, etc. This solution ties up with Blue Prism. Blue Prism is only unattended mode, and Automation Anywhere and UiPath are both attended and unattended. So the business case for non-technical automations, it may look a little bit complex, but it's not, okay? So how can we present a compelling business case for this implementation? First of all, we need to understand how much time it takes to run the process that will be automated. And I'm talking about either minutes, hours, that depends. And how many times this automated process runs per month. How many times will run when automated? Because sometimes I cannot run several times, but after I automated, I can run more and more. With that information at hand, we multiply one per another, here one per another, and get the total spent time in hours. Now let us get the license cost. So we get the development cost for the bot and the license cost. And we do the math to get the break even. So for example, the process cost 5K per month. Development cost plus license is 20K. This means that after 4 months running the automated process, it will pay itself. And afterwards it will only generate savings. Consider also the support cost for the bots and subtract for the monthly gain. The goal for any automation project is to be able to pay itself with the savings generated. These savings can be used to create more automations, thus generated more and more savings. So where to start with technical automation? Because also, again, considering start small and quick wins, the place to start for technical automation is unit test. Have the architecture of your team along the developers to really understand some things before start. The quality belongs to the whole team, not only the QA. And using a test strategy such as test pyramid, ensuring that one test that is tested in one layer is not supposed to be tested again on an upper layer. This helped to put everyone on the same page to achieve the goal for the team itself, a software with great quality. When we consider the test pyramid, the main idea is to create and run more tests on the lower layers, which are cheaper to create and maintain than the upper layers. With that understanding at hand, we can work together in order to create unit tests that will help address the quality of the code from within. Usually, developers are not really used to create unit tests with their code, but this is essential to start a good automation journey. With the same mentality, we can consider component integration testing. Those tests are easy to be run several times because they are self contained. Don't need test data, which is one of the most inhibitors for end to end testing, and their boundaries are mocked. With those tests created and running with every commit, dream big, really big, we can start looking for the automated static code analyzer using tools such as SonarCube. Some languages are free, others have to be paid, that will check for test coverage, duplicates line, duplicated lines of code, maintainability rating, and ensure best practices are applied to the code at hand, getting them triggered after unit and component test. It is a good practice to have those things running into a pipeline so you can automate the build for the development test environment and run the tests on the pipeline at each commit and pull request. Having all those code related things up and running, we can start to look for some functional automations such as data creation. Again, remember, the more you use the automation, the more it pays itself. And some common data needs you have. After having the regression set defined for your test, start automating them self-encapsulated with all the data needed along with it. Consider having scripts to create the data or to select the data for those tests running before the automation scripts. One thing very interesting, not difficult to have and poorly known, is to have layout testing automated, responsive design, using an open source framework such as Galen, for example. You put into the framework your layout definitions such as pixels for buttons, space between objects, colors, and run the tests. It will run, take screenshots showcasing the difference that is commonly unseen for bare eyes, such as one pixel difference, etc., and works to test responsive designs as well. So the business case for technical automation. The business case here depends on the type of automation. One thing very important to consider is that a defect found in production usually can be 140% more costly to fix than the one found on requirements definition. As you can see on this excellent chart from Scott Ambler, it is old from 2009, but is validated by him and also by Lisa Crispin. With continuous integration and continuous testing techniques such as TDD and BDD, we can have real early feedback on the cycle, reducing cost and fixing effectively bugs as they are found. For example, to fix a defect in requirements, it will cost $25. To some defect found in production could cost up to $2,500, besides the image of the company as well. In addition, it is very important to consider for more costly tasks that are going to be automated, it's imperative to also use the same business case for non-technical automation, considering time to run manually versus time to run automated, and how many times it will be run to understand when it will be the break even and if the automation is worthwhile in the end. Also consider the stability of the code and the application. So let's talk a little bit about building a roadmap. Okay, so we have now a good idea of how to start an automation journey. What are the automations type that is about, and we know some tips to start our journey. So let's start building the roadmap for this implementation. First of all, and of greatest importance, prioritize your automation. You can't do a good job if you start everything at once. And you need to have very clear where you want to start. How to do this? Prioritization grid. Brainstorm about all the automations that need to be done. Get a better understanding of them. Start ranking them in terms of which one is easier to implement, and do another rank for those that are more impactful for your journey. So, about impact, what is the story you want to tell? Do you want to show the real value of automation? Rank as one that will accelerate more stuff. Want to showcase equality? Rank as impactful the more quality. So that depends on the story that you want to tell always. After this, you cross the ones that are the easiest ones with the ones that are most impactful. Those are the quick wins and the ones that are imperative to begin with. And with that rank, you can also have a good grasp and a good understanding of what would be the next in line. So not you have this ranked, but you also can have this roadmap. After knowing what the automations are, establish your timeline. How long will this initiative be? What is the MVP? Where is the pilot? Where are you going to run this? The sprints will have 2, 3, 4 weeks. How long will it take to have to learn to procure and to ramp up the team? And what can be delivered incrementally? How can you expand even more your automations with several iterations? Plan accordingly. Track progress, adjust when necessary, treat it as a project, even if it's an ongoing one. Remember to save time to measure the automations created and see if the efficiency gains are as expected. The roadmap timeline. Now that we know exactly what kind of automations you're going to do and we have them prioritized, let's we should be ready to create the roadmap. First of all, consider that in the first month you will be working on understanding your reality. It's not an easy task. You need to understand the technologies involved, the maturity of the company, the area, the people you work with in automation, and productivity efficiency and their specific motivation background. Secondly, reserve at least 2 weeks to what could be until a month and a half prioritizing your automation with executive buy-in. This is imperative. Since once people will start to understand what are the results, new requests will fly. So first of all, it will be harder, but as soon as people will start to see the results, they will ask for more and more and more automation. Also, establish a prioritization method process to funnel the new requests. They will come. Now that we know what types of automation you will create, choose the best tool for your reality and roadmap. The selection process can be made in 1 week, but could also take several months depending on your company's procurement process. Plan accordingly. Now it's time to focus your efforts. Define your POC and MVP and how long and how many sprints will it take to have it complete. This definition can be done in 1 week if the previous steps were all defined. After that, we get to the stuff we know: implementation, plan, develop, test, deliver, retro, review, measure, adjust, plan, develop, test, deliver, retro, review, and we will start our automation journey. So after all of this, I want to showcase to you guys a major that is really interesting. So, uh, so this is an automation environment pipeline from a client that I have worked with in the past. So they started to work on the infrastructure on one hand, implementing the Bitbucket for SCM and Bamboo to prepare for continuous integration, deploy and delivery via pipelines. Then they started automating the static code analyzer, which is SonarQube, and implemented as a quality gate for the pipeline. Afterwards, they implemented Nexus for artifact repository and automate the deploy with urban code. With all of this in place, every time a commit is made, it runs quality gates and deploys to the environments if the quality gates are met. On the developer side, we have integrated with the pipeline JUnit, Jest, Mocha, Maven, according to the technology, to ensure that developers create and run their unit integration and component tests accordingly and meet the quality gates established. So this is for an environment. One other case that we have is for the test pyramid. So for the teams developing, they start applying the test pyramid concepts and start in the refinement process to plan in which layer of the test pyramid each test would be. This was made with the QA assisting the architect and developers. During the sprint, developers created the unit component tests along with the code itself. And each time they merged the code, automatically the tests were run. SonarQube as well, and the quality gate would be fulfilled or not. With the pull request, quality gates were checked and the code would be automatically deployed into the environment. And it was mandatory to have the same code passing through all the environments until production. One example, very interesting, that we have about the process automation. So it was indeed with the invoice. So we have one case that the person that was typing, it was taken, I believe, 5 minutes to type an invoice, and after we have automated this into the SAP, we were able to type the invoices in 2 minutes. So we have a lot of gains. But one thing that we have noticed is that for some types of automation, it's not as easy to automate as a human does. So, for example, I have seen a case that I have someone that get identification documents and look at it and would to fulfill the name and the father, mother, etc., etc., etc. And we were trying to do some studies to see how this would work with some automation. But in order to make this work, we would need to have to map all the identification documents that existed. So, for example, here in Brazil, we have the RGs. So we will have to get the old RGs, the new IG, the RGs, and the new models, or other types of identification as driver's license, etc., etc. And since they have a lot of background noise because of the authenticity. So we need to work with the OCR2 as well. And we need to have to, first of all, to recognize the type of the document that was reading and passports. Afterwards, have it mapped this type of documents and know that uh, besides the name tag, name label, we would have the name. And we need to do all this mapping for all those types of documents. And this would be really expensive and take a lot. And one thing that we notice is that the human was doing way faster than we could do it, and way cheaper than we could build a bot for it. So that really depends on what you're trying to do, and you have to make a study to understand where it really fits well, the automation, and where we still will need some human. We have more and more and more solutions with intelligent OCRs, and also with very good ideas of a fuzzy logic to understanding the OCR, the logic, etc. But I do think that we still need to work a lot on this. So, and one last thought for you guys: ideas are precious, and execution is everything. So, this is what I have for this exciting topic.